Hi, I'm Benovator. A year ago I got very interested in making drift trikes, and therefore I made a video on how to make drift trikes. Although this video is very low quality and I never intended it to have as many views as it did. Recently I got my check in the mail for this video. I made about $100 off of my drift trike series. So I feel it's fitting to make amends with the people that I've aggravated by this video. Often the hardest part to make on these drift trikes is the tires, so we'll start with those. You can make two types. One that's extremely durable and will last you a lifetime most likely, and one that is much cheaper and will most likely wear out within a week. I'll start with the first one, the more durable of the two. If you're as lucky as I am, you will find large diameter PVC pipes just lying around. I have. The one on the left is 8 inches in outside diameter, and it's schedule 35, I believe. It's meant for sewage, but it'll work perfectly fine as a drift trike tire. The white one on the right is schedule 40 and is far more heavy and more dense, and would make a better tire if it weren't for the smaller diameter of it. When finding the PVC pipe to fit over your tire, I recommend scavenging for it or finding a place that sells it locally, because since that it's so large, even if you find it for cheap, the shipping will negate the cheapness of it. But you can order it online for a expensive but doable price. I have links for the PVC pipe in the description. To make two drift trike tires, one for each side, obviously drift trike, you'll need an at least 6-inch section of 8-inch PVC pipe. I recommend 8 inches over 10 inches, mainly because as the diameter of the pipe increases, the price of it exponentially increases, as in an 8-inch diameter pipe is cheaper, far cheaper than a 10-inch diameter pipe, so I recommend using 8-inch. Your local hardware store might have 8-inch tires with ball bearings already fit in them, although I recommend, if you don't have one of those, using Harbor Freight. They sell these tires for about $8, and shipping is only $6, so you can order 2 of them for $16 and ship for $6. Once you have these 2 tires 8 inches in diameter, about 3 inches wide, you should deflate them. This is to fit them inside the PVC pipe. Now, once you get your 6-inch or larger section of it, you should cut it in half to 2 3-inch sections, although you can have them up to 6 inches wide. I recommend 4 inches though, that's the best. Now, it'll be very difficult, however, you can fit an 8-inch tire inside of an 8-inch PVC pipe. It will take some time and a lot of effort. Also, you should center it, because the more centered it is, the faster you'll be able to go, and the less it'll wobble. Although cutting these large diameter pipes is often difficult, I recommend using a hand saw, a band saw, any type of saw you can. I use a grinder because it's all I have, and it works relatively well. Once you have your 8-inch tire fit inside of your 8-inch PVC pipe, I recommend inflating it, obviously, and replacing the bearings that are inside of it naturally. I recommend doing this with the cheap tire as well, because the bearings that come standard in it are very, very low quality and will wear out within a week. Buying even the bearings that I'm going to use, and that I do use, are about $10. That's not for each, that's for a set of 4, which is 2 inside of each tire. These will make it go far faster, wobble less, and be just more durable and all. I have links in the description for those as well. It's going to take a lot of effort to pull the bearings that come standard inside of the wheels, although, like I said, it's highly recommended to pull those out and put in the new ones. Be gentle though. It'll be difficult, but still be gentle. You don't want to ruin your bearings before you've even rode on them. Now let's move on to the cheaper tires. The cheaper tires, as opposed to using a large diameter PVC pipe, will actually just use a 5-gallon bucket like you find at most hardware stores, including Home Depot. You want to cut off the bottom of this and cut off the top of this, as the bottom is plugged and the top has a much thicker lid. This should give you a large section that's usable, although it is very thin, and let me remind you, it'll wear out, although you can replace it for much cheaper. A bucket will cost about $2, as opposed to the $21 for the PVC pipe that you ordered online, although the PVC pipe that you ordered online will last most likely the entire life of the drift trike. The tires that you'll be using are 10 inches in diameter, Although they're 2 inches in diameter larger, they're actually slightly cheaper. They're $6 as opposed to $8. These tires will cost about $33 cheaper, but once again, they won't last nearly as long. The inside diameter of a 5-gallon bucket is about 11 inches. The tire that I give you in the description is 10 inches. Although this might sound illogical because there'll be an inch of leeway, if you inflate it properly or slightly above, it will occupy the space tightly. The total cost of the cheap tires will be about $20. The total cost of the expensive tires will be about $53. Also, a common question that I'm asked is how long does the PVC pipe last? The PVC pipe actually lasts for a very long time. You can continuously ride this every day for a year and you will not wear down the PVC pipe, even at high speeds exceeding 50 miles per hour. And if I haven't already mentioned it, the more expensive tires will go faster because they have much more precise bearings. Now that I've covered the cheap and expensive tires, let's go into the actual frame. The frame will actually be much cheaper than you think. The tires are the majority cost of the trike. Alright, now when it comes to the frame, it's irrelevant what kind of bike you use. You can use girl bikes, you can use boy bikes, you can use small bikes, you can use large bikes, mountain bikes, it doesn't matter. Later in this summer, which is 2013 by the way, I plan to make a drift trike without welding, because making these drift trikes does assume that you have a welder and welder. I know it's pretty assuming, I apologize. A welder is about $120, and unless you're using it for other projects than this, it's not a good idea to buy it just for making one drift trike. It's not cost effective. The grinder, on the other hand, is $20 and is extremely useful for many things, and you can even find it for Harbor Freight if it's on sale for $10. Very cheap. The blades are also very cheap as well, about maybe $1 or $2 each. To convert a bike frame into a drift trike frame, you need to make 3 simple cuts and remove the crankcase and rear wheel. Much of the flack from my first video was because it took me such a long time to take out the crank. It's wound in a weird way. I believe it's counterclockwise as opposed to regular. I'm not sure how it is. I'm not a bike fanatic. The point is you need to take this off completely, along with the rear wheel and the 3 cuts so that your drift trike looks like this. Once your drift trike looks like that, what you should do is, with your welder, weld on 2 bolts, one on each side protruding outward. These bolts are 5/8. They will fit inside of the ball bearings because the inner diameter of the ball bearings is also 5/8. Also, on the forks of your front wheel, you also might want to put a peg, weld on a peg. I don't recommend making this peg longer than 2 inches, or else if you have your feet on it, it'll make it difficult to turn because your feet will have a lot of leverage on it. Now, if you feel that your trike seems sort of weak, you can weld on various supports in spots that may seem weak and flexible and, weak. Also, where the crank used to be, I recommend putting a horizontal bar. This is to transition from a standing to a sitting position, because most of the time you'll want to pedal forward using your feet in a standing position and then transition into a sitting position unless you're on a very steep hill, which many people are, but where I live there aren't a lot of steep hills, so it's a good idea to get a running start with it. Another addition I put on to my particular bike that I recommend is putting a piece of metal, a sort of fender, over your tire. This is so that if you accidentally stand on it, you won't roll beneath it because it's painful. Also, it allows you more positions to stand on your trike. On my particular trike as well, I cut it a little bit so that the steering wheel was less vertical, it was more horizontal, to give a sort of more relaxed position while triking. This isn't necessarily a good idea. It is if you want to go fast and just want to coast, although it allows for a bad turning. Also, I recommend to make the wheels at least 2 feet apart, because my particular one has wheels that are 19 inches apart, and this is far not enough. Because the wider your wheelbase is, the less likely you are to flip. Now, If you're wondering what type of metal I used on addition to the metal that's already in the bike, I use conduit. Conduit is very cheap and they have it at most hardware stores. And when I say it's cheap, it's very cheap as opposed to metal you'll find in other places. It's about $1.70 per 10 feet. And in one drift trike, I can't imagine you'll use more than 30 feet, which means you won't spend more than $6 on the metal. I'm trying to explain this well I can, but it's kind of difficult because many things you just have to do on your own. You have to experiment on your own. You have to have your own faults and failures to figure it out for yourself, as I did. Now, let's go back to the axles. A question I've gotten before is, do your axles bend? No, a 5/8 bolt is very thick, very, very thick. And if you weld it properly onto the right and left sides of the bike, perpendicular to the bike, and weld them properly, they should be strong enough. Also, what you have to do is, assuming your bolt is long enough, you should weld on a washer so that it doesn't slide towards the bike. And when you put the bolts on to secure the wheel properly, you want to make it so that they're just barely tight. Not extremely tight, not loose, but perfectly tight. Also, due to the extreme vibration, I recommend putting a second bolt on or thread lock. Thread lock is good with vibrations and it will assure that your tire doesn't come off. I recommend using red thread lock because these are large bolts, and if you want to remove them you still can, but the vibrations will not loosen it. Thread lock is very, very strong. Now, as I said at the beginning of the video, all of the things that you need, the tires, the ball bearings, the PVC pipes, everything except for the bikes and the conduit are in the description. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments or a personal message as you please. I also, before you leave a comment or send a personal message, recommend looking through all the comments, because somebody might have already asked your question, and me repeating the question is often unnecessary and aggravating, so please look for people who have your same questions. I hope this video has helped you to make a drift trike, and I hope you do make drift trikes and send me pictures and messages of you making them, because it's very pleasant. I hope this helped you. Peace. One last note. If you don't have a proper seat, putting pool noodles on the metal does look ugly as hell, but it's very comfortable. It's far more comfortable than sitting on the metal and cutting up your back and hurting your bones. It seriously helps a lot, even though it looks like hell.